Josiah becomes king when he is 8 years old. This is really important. Josiah is the age of our second graders who were just up here to get their Bibles when he becomes king of Judah. And he becomes king of Judah at an absolutely terrible moment. His father Ammon has ruled for 2 years and it's been a disaster. His grandfather Manasseh is remembered as the most wicked and unfaithful king in all of Judah's history. Not only does he erect altars to other gods or and put up statues and idols, even within the temple itself, he adopts even the practice of child sacrifice, offering up one of his own children to another god. At this point, God determines that the kingdom of Judah has become so unfaithful that it can stand no longer. And so the kingdom will no longer persist with its capital city there in Jerusalem. This is the situation that Josiah comes into. He is an 8-year-old. He is ruling a kingdom that has been proclaimed it is defunct and it will not stand. So, Josiah could choose to eat ice cream sundaes every day. He could lay around in his pajamas all the time. He could refuse to take a shower or a bath. He could watch on his iPad constantly, nonstop, until the declaration of God came to pass. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Why not? The kingdom's coming to an end. Nothing will stop it. He's the end of the line. But for reasons that we don't understand, that's not the path that Josiah chooses. Instead, the story jumps forward to when Josiah is 26 years old, and we don't find him playing video games and hosting pool parties in the palace. Instead, what he's doing is he's running a capital campaign for the temple in Jerusalem. The very temple that his grandfather desecrated with all those idols and altars 2 generations before. He's doing the quiet, faithful, boring work that's associated with his political role as the king of Judah. He's going over spreadsheets and reviewing the budget and having meetings with the other cabinet members to see how things are going in their department. It's pretty boring stuff. And so at this moment, he asks Hilkiah, the high priest, to go to the temple to collect the offering there to see what's been gathered and to make sure that the contractors and the subcontractors are getting paid on time. And while they're there in the temple doing this ordinary task, they come across the book of the law. Now, I don't know if this is for dramatic effect, for the sake of storytelling, but the way the story plays out, it sounds as though this is the first time the priests of Judah or the king himself have ever heard of the book of the law, which obviously means that they were never 8-year-olds in the 2nd grade at Raleigh Court Presbyterian Church. Because our 2nd graders know, and I need your attention, 2nd graders, they know the books of the law, right? So can you all say those out loud for me, 2nd graders? The first 5 books of the Old Testament. It starts with Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Very good. That's the book of the law. You all can join 2nd grade Sunday school next week if you need a refresher among the rest of the congregation. So they have this book of the law, and Josiah has it read, and they turn to Deuteronomy, and he finds this written down about the king. The king, moreover, must not acquire great numbers of horses for himself, or make the people return to Egypt to get more of them, for the Lord has told you, you are not to go back that way again. He must not take many wives, or his heart will be led astray. He must not accumulate large amounts of silver and gold. When he takes the throne of his kingdom, he is to write for himself on a scroll a copy of this law taken from the Levitical priests. It is to be with him, and he is to read it all the days of his life, so that he may learn to revere the Lord his God and follow carefully all the words of the law and these decrees, and not consider himself better than his fellow Israelites, and turn from the law to the right or to the left. Then he and his descendants will reign a long time over his kingdom in Israel. Josiah reads this, and he tears his clothes in lamentation. This has not been the way his father reigned or his grandfather reigned. There was nothing in his royal education that taught him that his role as the king was to be one who was obedient to the law of God. He thought he was the one in charge, not the one responsible for honoring God's instruction. And so obedient Josiah knows that he needs a consultation. He needs to hear from God. So he puts together a team, and he sends them out to find the prophet Huldah. I don't know why we get her address in 2 Kings, that she lived in the second quarter of Jerusalem. I don't think we ever get anyone else's address in the whole Bible, but I don't know if she had a particularly prominent home or what. But he goes to the second quarter to the prophet Huldah. She's the one who speaks for God. And what Huldah has to say is not very comforting. She says, yes, Josiah, indeed, the nation is going to collapse, just as you have read, for its unfaithfulness to the law of God. But because you have shown contrition, because you have committed to changing your ways, you will not have to live to see it happen. It won't happen until after you've died. But there is nothing that Josiah can do to change the outcome. His legacy will eventually end, even if not in his lifetime. And yet, even with the promised destruction of the nation looming, he gathers the people to hear the law read. He renews the covenant. He restores the temple. He purges it of all of those altars and idols that had been built there. It will ultimately do nothing to serve his legacy or to strengthen the country, but Josiah does it anyway. Josiah is faithful to God's instruction anyway. I think that's incomprehensible to us. Almost every decision we make, I think really every decision we make has to do with measurable outcomes. We want to know the purpose of the project or the activity. What's the point? When am I ever going to need to know this? The student asks the teacher. How is this relevant? Right? We sign up for Noon or for Weight Watchers, and we follow the prescribed plan that we're given because we need to get our cholesterol down, because we don't want to have a heart attack in our 50s, or because we don't want to feel embarrassed when we put on a bathing suit, right? We track the number of hours that we sleep at night on our phone so that we make sure we're getting the doctor-recommended number of hours, because we've been told that'll help stave off the dementia that could come in old age. We save for our retirement so that we can travel like we want to. There's a goal. We don't just save to save. We save because we want to travel, or we want to be able to provide for our grandkids' college tuition. We go to practice every day to be part of the team, hoping that this year, if we all work together, we will achieve our goal of getting to a state championship. There's always a goal, always a possibility, always some potential good future that could happen if we practice present discipline and obedience. But that's not Josiah. No matter his devotion, no matter his faithfulness, no matter how perfectly he obeys, the nation's going to fall. He obeys because he's the king. And the king is to honor God's instruction and to enact it. His purpose is to be faithful to the law. We can't fathom this. We see how our leaders operate. It's not like Josiah. We see this sometimes happen in business practice, right? We need a measurable outcome, so we privilege shareholder value, right? the potential profit of the company makes you a good CEO or not. So that doesn't matter about product integrity or workers' compensation. As long as next quarter's profits exceed this quarter's profits, you're judged as a good leader of the organization. We see this with politicians too, right? You craft stances, policies, programs, so that you can win power or win re-election. Remaining in office is the measurable outcome that shows that you're good at your job. Preventing the opposition from attaining power shows that you're good at your job. But that means that all of our actions are geared towards these measurable goals that benefit us, our legacy, our reputation, our ego. And so it's impossible for us to imagine that we would be led by something else, a commitment to an authority other than my influence, my power, some goal I've been told to reach for. Commitment to a right way, even when it's not going to change the outcome. We're looking at the story of Josiah today, right? This 8-year-old king who receives the word of God and comes to live from it. We're studying this story on the same Sunday that we're giving 7 and 8-year-olds the word of God, the scriptures, this beautiful and complicated story of God's presence with God's people in hopes that they will live from it. We're baptizing 2 children today as well. Are these activities a means to an end? If these kids follow their Bible guide and they read this every day, is it going to magically make them more moral, more ethical, better people? This baptismal act, you baptize a child, does that come with some kind of benefits package? Something to make life better now or at least in the future? Is that why we do it? Are these means to an end? Maybe, though, they're the beginning of trying to get our minds and hearts around this leadership that Josiah models for us. We're faithful to the story because it's the story that God has gifted us with. We've been called by it. We baptize because we have been enveloped in God's grace. There's no promise that life's going to be happier or easier or more fulfilling because of these actions. We do them simply because God has called us to do them. And we've seen through the generations that Christian people, as they read these words of these scriptures, they find within them the living God. They find hope and comfort and challenge. We baptize because we trust in a promise that we are not abandoned. We do not live on our own. We obey this way of God that we know in Jesus Christ because we belong to it. We belong to God. We belong to this story. So might we step out in some way into this incomprehensible path? Obedient belonging, even when it makes no difference. Can we live that way?